Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to our STEM Career Profile series as part of our Road to Victory coverage for the Solar Decathlon. Today, we're joined by Michael Wong, who is a recent graduate at the University of Waterloo. Michael currently is an energy analyst in the building energy sustainability firm, BQ Building Performance in Toronto. Hi, Michael. How are you doing today?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing fine. Michael, can you tell us more about the Warrior Home with the University of Waterloo that is in the Solar Decathlon?
Sure. Yeah. So Warrior Home is the University of Waterloo's collaborative and multidisciplinary design team. It was started back in around 2017, 2018 by a few really passionate students who wanted to, for their fourth year design project, do something really innovative and also good for the community. So they started to look into net zero affordable housing. And they also found out about this interesting program from the US Department of Energy, the Solar Decathlon, and also the Race to Zero. So our first year, we did the Race to Zero for the attached housing. And thankfully, we were one of the winners for that category. And the next year, we decided to do a little bit of a shift away from the theoretical components of the Race to Zero and do something more physical and tangible for the community.
When you look at this house that is built for a colder climate, how do you ensure high performance in that region?
Looking at the passive performance of the house is key. And that's not necessarily just looking at the thermal insulation. Well, we did not use passive house levels exactly. I believe we were inspired by passive house levels of insulation for this climate region. So we had not only looked at that, but we wanted to consider controlling the glazing ratios on the building, but also trying to make sure that we would achieve some solar gains during the winter, but keep those under control because that would just lead to thermal comfort issues in the summer as well. And I know we also had a lot of discussion about condensation as well, because the environment in Ontario is tricky that we can have extremely cold and dry winters and also quite hot and wet summers. So there's a lot of concerns about that, but really it's about not necessarily reinventing the wheel in terms of the passive performance of the wall, but just making sure we had good construction practices, that we had a solid amount of thermal insulation, and that we were careful and meticulous with the placement of our air and vapor barriers.
What kind of courses did you take for high performance buildings at the University of Waterloo? And did you have to have a specific degree or certification?
I took a course that was just entitled Building Science, instructed by Professor Straub. I took a few other courses about building energy in terms of more conventional, but also building energy and specifically low energy buildings. But I would say that my job, well, it definitely benefited from this, just due to the, I would say, multidisciplinary nature of the industry. You know, some people can come in with a purely mechanical background and not having much architectural prowess, or maybe the complete reverse, where someone comes in with a lot of architectural background, but not too much mechanical. Fortunately, I work with a really good supportive team where there's a lot of collaborative learning and we're always trying to teach and learn from each other. So the fact that I didn't come from a pure mechanical or a pure architectural or a stronger hybrid of both didn't necessarily matter.
Yeah, and tell me more about that, how your experience being part of the Solar Decathlon has helped in your career.
So first of all, when I was back on the Warrior Home design team, primarily I was in charge of a lot of the energy analysis, obviously, because this was some of my experience from my university co-ops. Later on, my role had changed a little bit from more hands-on to being an advisor because of some of my experience with low energy housing and some different housing applications. But I think that that really helped me ease into my full-time position, because I was also starting to sit in on design team meetings and hopefully start to guide the conversation a little bit and say, well, maybe we're not quite meeting our energy targets yet. So maybe we should start to explore slightly different mechanical options, or maybe we should start to look at a few different insulation levels in maybe this part of the building. And I thought that was a really good, nice, smooth transition for me. As a more senior leader on that team, you might have to be responsible for delegating tasks to different sub-team leaders, and you might have to be responsible for helping to make sure that they can properly delegate to their own sub-teams as well. And so that huge collaborative effort of working towards one deliverable over the course of many, many months, if not years, in the case of the Solar Decathlon, and with that many people, that was really a a hugely invaluable experience that I think to this day, I would say that not many of my projects kind of reach that same scale. The community actually invited us for the key giving ceremony. That was a really fun day where they really invited basically the entire community, if possible, to help bestow the keys on the new Habitat for Humanity homes. One of them was our net zero housing.
Yeah, I think that's really fantastic.
Yeah, it really was something.
If you were to go back to high school today and give advice to students, what would it be?
I think I would say to just try to be as flexible as possible, because even when I started off with school, I knew I wanted to do something in this general environmental field, but I wasn't really quite sure where I wanted to go. And I ended up working in the field of building energy and sustainability almost on a fluke, just kind of based on some places where I had applied for a co-op position. And I selected to actually go to work where I currently work now at EQ because I really liked the vibe of the interviewer and I liked how the job sounded, even though I hadn't really heard much about it before. And then when I went there and worked there for 4 months, I realized that this was kind of the industry that I did want to just keep working in forever, even though up until that point, I was already halfway through my school and I had never even really heard of this entire industry.
Do you see this as a growing field and more people joining into this workforce to address these kinds of issues? And does it reach a personal level for you that you really do find a lot of interest in sustainability and high performance building practices?
As a core tenet, I find myself that sustainability is and the environment and climate change are some of the most important aspects that really which I live my life by. So I think that the ability for me to kind of go to work every day and think that I might not be making a big difference every day, but every day I'm making a small difference. And I think it's for sure a huge industry, and we're reading all these things in the news about how we have to shift away from fossil fuels and work on decarbonizing our grid. And I think that our building stock is huge. And every year we're probably spending about 20, 30, 40% of our nation's resources just on buildings. So if we can reduce that, then I think we're definitely doing our part in the fight for climate change.
You're interested in energy modeling and you're interested in analysis and building stock in Toronto. How would you say that is applied to what you do today in your career and why you chose it?
I definitely have a lot of interest in high performance buildings. So the fact that I got to work with the University of Waterloo and with the US DOE on high performance housing and the net zero, it was really interesting because I got an opportunity to kind of do work with that and also do work with the wide performance of buildings that we see in Toronto. So that kind of ranges from relatively typical run of the mill construction projects that might be meeting code and some other cooler high performance projects that might be achieving various levels of LEED or even might be considering passive house, different levels of interesting HVAC implications, especially things like geothermal. I'm always interested in exploring new things like that. And I think a lot of my past experiences helped me to get an early high level look at what high performance exactly looks like.
Tell me more about that high performance and what you've learned from working in the Decathlon and what you're doing now with EQ building performance.
I definitely learned a lot of interesting things when I was still in school working on this project, especially because back then it was a lot more trying to figure out things for ourselves. I think, for instance, not too long ago, I was trying to look at something where I was comparing how the insulation levels in buildings might differ. And then I remembered back to some specific instances where we were having workshops trying to design what the building looked like. And I was actually able to call back on some of those experiences with condensation issues and with different kinds of like thermal bridging in high performance buildings.
Very interesting and very much applies to that house in a colder region. And what would you say to the homeowner now who it gets to enjoy this?
Firstly, I would really just thank them and really the whole community for letting us, this ragtag bunch of university students, kind of come in and get the honor and the privilege and the opportunity to get to work with them and the local Habitat for Humanity branch to collaborate on a design with them and the community and momentarily be a part of the community. And I know a lot of the members on the team, because I had graduated at that point, the members on the team who had actually gone up for several build days to help contribute to the actual building and the construction of the house. I would really just say, thank you for letting us be part of this.
What's next? I mean, you guys brought this idea forward to a local partnership group within Habitat for Humanity. I mean, is this a direction they would like to go in the future for more of their housing stock?
From what I recall, I do remember having several discussions with the band council of the community, and they had mentioned that there were so many issues present on the reserve that could potentially be solved by student-led initiatives like this, because there's a lot of available, cheap, or sometimes even free labor, especially when we as students are kind of just like looking for problems to solve in our schooling. And I know that this was something really big that they're interested in.
That hands-on experience, that real value of doing the work with being in the community and learning from them and understanding local partnerships and leveraging groups that can work alongside with you. It sounds fantastic. Really appreciate your effort. Michael Wong at the University of Waterloo, who is now working as an energy analyst for a sustainability firm in Toronto. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to join us for our next STEM career profile as we continue to learn from students who have participated in this event. For more information, go to www.solardecathlon.gov.